I figured some of you might want to talk theory. I don't know. Theory is easy. I don't know if that sounds strange to hear somebody say that, but I will say if your teacher doesn't think it's easy, then maybe you learn it from somebody else. It should appear, someone who understands it extremely well, to that person, it should appear very easy. That's what it means to understand, and more or less what it means to understand something very well. I think understanding something maximally well is to know it in the fewest number of propositions, the fewest things that just have to be memorized, right? So there may be legitimately complex things about the world that are, because the facts of the matter are complex. Maybe I'm ranting here. It's hard for me to not go on these little rants. All right, theory. Do you want to? I figured we could talk about all the chords that exist in this one video. Every chord that exists. Ready? It's simple. For every chord that exists, you memorize 3 categories and 3 words. 3 categories, 3 words. The 3 categories are triads. Some caveats here. So triad means 3-note chords, but this right here is a triad, right? Root 3 5, root 5 3. That's a triad, or G B D G D G. Notice there were only G's, B's, and D's there, or there's only roots 3s and 5s there. That's a triad. Beware of guitar players telling you this is a triad. This is a triad. They are triads, but they very often imply that the actual number of notes that you're playing means it's a triad, right? You have to have only 3 notes, and once you add that, it's not a triad anymore, is their implication, or they'll outright say it. Don't learn anything from such a person. Just change the station. So all that matters are repeated notes. Don't matter. Notes that are in different octaves that are the same type of note don't count toward the note choice. So triads are 3 different notes, no matter how many octaves they're in, no matter how many redundant ones there are. You could have 10 3s, if we could hear that broadly, and 8 roots and 6 5s, 6 fifths, and it's still a triad. It doesn't matter. So memorize triads. They're major, minor, diminished, augmented. You got to just memorize them. We can't make this is all the chords that exist in the fewest number of things that you have to know. I cannot reduce them any more than that. You have to just memorize major, minor, diminished, augmented, what they are. Major is root 3 5, minor is root flat 3 5, diminished is root flat 3 flat 5, and augmented, which is usually pretty rare, I like using it for certain things, is root 3 sharp 5, right? You just memorize them. You got to memorize them, and then work them through your cage shape. Start to see it. Remember last week, last video, I mentioned how, I'm trying to talk fast. I want this to be short. How many, when you learn a cage shape, you learn what notes are what, right? This root 5, root 3 5, root, right? Look at the last video, and I talk about it. All right, so triads, the first of 3 categories, plus remember we're going to add 3 words to it. Triads, major, minor, diminished, augmented. You memorize them, put them under your hands, figure them out. 7th chords, those are 4-note chords. Again, it doesn't matter if some of the notes are repeated in different octaves and you actually have a ton of notes, right? As long as there are 4 different notes, it's a 7th chord. One could be pedantic and just come up with other 4-note chords here, but what we're really referring to isn't just 4 chords with 4 notes. We're saying 7th chords are the following specifically, right? The following chords: root 3 5 7. Major 7, minor 7. There's 5 of them. Really, there's 6. But the 5 7th chords are major 7, root 3 5 7. Where do you find a 7, by the way? Anywhere you got a root, it's down a fret. Remember, the most important axiom in all music is 3 and 4, 7 and 1. 3 and 4, 7 and 1. 3 and 4, 7 and 1. The most important thing you can know about music is 3 and 4, 7 and 1. It's where the half steps are in a chord, in a scale, right? if let's say that you, right, it's what it's doing is describing the major scale, right? But it also describes, you know, if I've got a chord and this is my third, then there's a 4. But here's a 2. Let's notice my third is here. My 2 is a whole step down. My 4 is only a half step up. Right? I've got my root here. That means there's a 7 because 7 and 1 are together. But 7 and 6 aren't. So if my chord needs a 6 and a 2 and a 5. Very old jazz chord thing. So major 7, dominant 7, minor 7. Or I think most people probably say in the order of major 7, minor 7, dominant 7. Beware, dominant 7 is always just called 7. Like this is called G7. The danger here is G7 does not have a 7. It's got a flat 7. It's root 3, 5, flat 7. So in other words, notice here's my root, 7, flat 7. It's a whole step down from my root. But it's called G7 even though it doesn't have a 7. So beware of that. It's not the only time that musical terminology will seek to lead you astray. Don't even get me started on rhythms. Quarter note gets 1 beat, a whole note gets 4 beats. It's like they're dealing with 2 different sets of the terms are about 2 different sets of fractions, and then they're offset. They could just be the same. It's so stupid. It's so stupid. God. Anyway, major 7, root 3, 5, 7. Minor 7, root flat 3, 5, flat 7. Notice it's a minor triad with a flat 7. Dominant 7, or just 7, is root 3, 5, major triad, with a flat 7, right? Then there's half diminished 7, which is a diminished triad with a flat 7. And then there's diminished 7, which is diminished triad with a double flat 7, which is, yes, it's just a 6. And you can call 6. The jazz players aren't going to give you crap if you call it a 6, right? The classical players might give you crap. Some jazz players might give you crap. I mean, some people call it flat, double flat 7. Some people call it 6. It's not an issue. The people who make it an issue are probably not particularly good musicians. Yeah. Or they're classical musicians, which I'm not going to cross that line. I would just say trying to do most any gig and incorporate classical musicians into it can be a very frustrating experience at times. So not all of them, but the ones who are good in those situations, it's because they're also non-classical musicians. Classical musicians tend to be inept at certain things. How's that for drama? All right. So major 7, minor 7, dominant 7, or 7, half diminished 7, diminished 7. You want to learn those. So first category is triads, major, minor, diminished, augmented. You got a minute, and memorize them. Second one is 7th chords, major 7, minor 7, dominant 7, half diminished 7, diminished 7. Oh, by the way, there is one other one that shows up. It's a minor major 7. It's like minor 7, but it's got a regular 7. Remember, this is my root. It shows up in some jazz standards. Right? My Funny Valentine. It would have been more efficient just to sing the lyrics right there. Radiohead fans, the end of Amnesiac. What's that song called? I don't know what key it's in. I haven't played it, but that's just a minor major 7 to a minor 7 and back, right? I don't know what key it's in. Maybe it's in that. That didn't sound wrong, but I don't have perfect pitch, so I've never played it. So there is that chord. It shows up on occasion, but fairly rarely. So first category is triads. Second category is 7th chords. The third category is extended chords. And all you need to know here is what 9, 11, and 13 are. 9 is a 2. It's not a 2 that's up an octave. It's not a 2 in any particular octave. It is a 2. It could be in any octave you want. Yeah, everybody guesses that wrong. So 9 is 2, 11 is 4, 13 is 6. Literally, back to this one. Remember we said, like, here's a 5, right? Now that's a 13 because 5 to 6. Here, let's give it a 9. Here's a major 7, right? Let's make it a major 9. You could argue, and he's a 3. We should talk about that. Maybe that's gonna have to. Gotta keep it under 15 minutes here. Here's what's misleading to guitar players all the time. Here's a shape. Name this chord. The shape itself will always underdetermine, to use philosophy of science terminology, will always underdetermine its name. So the name this chord game, the reason you guys end up arguing over the names is because there are always multiple names that a given shape can have. The good news is the name this chord game has no relation to actually doing music. At no point in playing a song do I need to be able to name a chord. I need to be able to start from a name and play something that would work. So G major 13, because it's like a G major 7, I've given it a 6. I can give it a 9 also, because here's another thing about extended chords is they have any extension includes all lower extensions. So if it says G major 13 or G13, then it includes a 9 and 11, hypothetically. 11s are tricky. 11s and 3s, major 3s, don't play well together, so most people leave 11s out. Minor 11, though, it's killer. Absolutely killer. By the way, notice something here. G major 13. Here's a G major 7. Here's a G7. Here's a G minor 7. Here's a G major 13. Here's a G13. Here's a G minor 13. Notice the thing that changes between the extended chords is only the 7th chord. The difference between G major 7, G7, and G minor 7 is the only difference between a G major 9, G minor 9, and G9. It's the only difference. Notice the dominant chords just have the number, right? G9. If I've got something that's got an accidental in it, so I'm going to play a G13 sharp 11. So G7, well, a G with a sharp 11. Anyways, screw it. You know where to find a sharp 11. Anyway, so triads, 7th chords, you memorize them. You learn how extensions work. I just told you. 9 is 2, 11 is 4, 13 is 6. It doesn't matter what octave, and the name will technically include all our extensions. You can't actually play all the notes, so you're not required to play all the notes. You just need to play something that doesn't disagree with those notes, right? So G13 would have 7 notes in it. You can't do that on guitar. You just pick some. The old jazz guard will say, leave out the 5, leave out the root. You can leave out the root anytime you want. Leave out the 5. They talk as if playing chords is to disseminate information about what chords. Anyway, sorry, it's a separate rant, and I'm running out of time here. And then, so those are the 3 categories, and then you just learn what add means, alt, anyway, add, alt, and sus. Sus, let's start with that since it's the most common. Sus means the third has been replaced. So there's 2 kinds. There's sus 4 and sus 2. Sus 4 can also just be called sus, right? If it says F7 sus, so you got F7, sus. I've taken the 3 to a 4. F7 sus 2. Notice the 3's down to a 2. Right? Add chords are triads plus the extensions. And the trick here, so an add 13. Here's a A flat major chord, A flat add 13, A flat minor add 13, right? The trick is that these all have synonyms. I can't talk. So like a G, A flat add 13 could also be called an A flat 6. I wish those synonyms didn't exist. They do, and they're looking to screw you up, unfortunately. So add chords are always a triad plus the extension that's named, not lower extensions. No 7th chord, right? And then the last category is alt, which is a dominant chord, or I've seen people say major 7 alt, but a dominant chord with a flat 9, sharp 9, flat 5, sharp 5, a messed up 9 and a messed up 5. Those are all the chords that exist. 3 categories: triads, 7th chords, how extensions work, add plus 3 words. You need to know what add means, what alt means, what sus means. And that's it. That's every chord that exists. You can be pedantic at this point and do a little gotcha game, like what about so-and-so and so-and-so and stuff, and that's fine. Enjoy your pedantism in the comments. Tell me what theory thing you would like to learn Now I'm into YouTube only time because it says 15:03. So now I'm only talking to the YouTube people because what's it called? Instagram cuts it off. In the comments, what theory thing are you having trouble with? I can almost guarantee you we can fix it pretty short order. I know that that me telling you the three categories and the three words is very far from giving you mastery of these things, and I recognize that. But at least here's the thing: you're not going to run into chords that weren't on that list. You should know what, in case you don't already, what inversions look like, or change bass chords, right? If it says A/C sharp, A over C sharp, right? It means it's an A chord, but the bottom note is C sharp instead of A. You can just leave that to the bass player or the pianist or whoever is normally the bottom player. But if it's the bottom note player, A over C sharp, A over E, A over D, A over B, A over B flat, A over G sharp. Now we're getting into Kenny Wheeler territory. Yeah. Comment any theory thing you want us to cut through. It's probably simpler than you're thinking it is, or it's probably simpler than it's being presented to you as. If it's hard, it's something might be wrong in the presentation. So